Welcome to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
I'm Shannon Lawrence.
And I'm MB Partlow.
Quick content warning before we get started. This podcast may contain language and disturbing content, so enter at your own risk. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Back again.
Hello. I haven't said that in a while.
We have a guest today, Sam Knight, so I'm going to let Sam tell you a little about himself.
First, I'd like to say that lives in my head rent-free. Hello! I hear that quite often when people walk by and say something that's like, that's what my brain fills in the blank. That's what they said.
Yep.
Hello! I'm Sam Knight. I'm an author. I'm a publisher. I'm an editor, kind of all over the place. It's one of those things people are like, hey, what do you write? And I got tired of saying everything but erotica. So I picked a pen name and wrote some erotica, which failed. It failed terribly, which made me very happy because I no longer feel the need to try to do that. And it made no money. So that was good. So I write everything.
I like it.
I mean, I'm on my way to doing that all right. Just I'm gonna write everything and then just go with it. What spells? Let's do that. Okay. Jeez.
You could just take feet pictures.
If you've got the feet for it, Shannon probably could. I that doesn't work for me. I've reached the point where I've got like old man feet where they look like Fred Flintstone's feet, but with claws.
You know what? There is someone for everyone's feet.
Yes.
that's my theory. And it is actually called Feetography.
Oh.
Yeah.
Listen,
I'd ask why you know that, but I know you're a writer, so that's
it is all over social media. Maybe that's just what the algorithms serve me.
Yeah, it has never served me that.
Now it will.
Yep. You're welcome.
Facebook has heard.
When we did the piece on
oh God, no.
The dance troupe.
No, don't say the name of it.
I won't say the name of
Chinese, is it? I think it's Chinese.
It is.
Yeah.
Chinese.
I remember you guys talking about that.
Okay.
I had been to see them like 2 months before you guys talked about it. And I was like, yep, that makes sense.
And everybody who listened to that got it all over their feed for months. It was, that was really.
We'll call that the troupe that shall not be named.
Yes. The dancers who shall not be named.
Don't do it. The cult.
That also works.
Oh, no. Feet pictures. I have already stated I will do whatever I have to if I have to make money. I've discovered there is something called Loonees, and they are people whose fetish is balloons. I discovered that last week.
And how did you discover that?
Oh, because I was watching a show called Weird Sex because I wanted story ideas.
and they're called Looners, like
Looners, like balloon, but Looners.
So are you using a B at the beginning of what you're saying, or are you just saying Looners?
Nope, it's just Looners.
See, that takes all the fun out of it, right? I feel like if there's no B in the balloon, it's not that a bee in a balloon. Actually, a bee in a balloon would be fun. But I feel like you just like skipped right over and called them into crazies and got rid of like the part that's round and interesting when you leave the B out.
That's true. That does have a shape. That word has a shape.
Mm-hmm.
But it also really gives people an easy insult to use if they just want to switch it to the Loonees. So then they're what is it? A Canadian coin? What is it?
Loonees.
Loonie, yeah.
Loonies and toonies.
Yeah. So then it changes all meaning.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, that was the only thing that stuck out to me from that show. I was like, I've heard of everything else, whatever. Then I was like, oh, balloons. I see. Okay. And that'll be my OnlyFans.
And now if you can take pictures of your feet with balloons.
Then you cover two
right
at the same time. Look at us giving people ways to make money.
Well, and then, toonies, right? So put them through a cartoon filter.
Amazing. I just actually got a mental image of that right away. The cartoon balloon videos.
Now I'm seeing big
Listen, if anybody out there does it, you owe us.
Yes.
A percentage.
Standard 15%.
That's right. I think that'll work. That's right.
But I have this image of big monster feet made out of balloons. Cartoon monster feet made out of balloons.
Oh. Wow.
See?
Every seat. That's how you know you can give the same topic to a room full of writers and they'll all write something different.
Yeah, because as soon as she said that with the monster feet, I was thinking like, remember like Godzilla versus Bambi?
No.
It's a cartoon video from a long time ago. It'll be really easy to find. It's Godzilla versus Bambi. It's very short.
I'm writing
But
it
anyway,
down.
It would be.
that popped into my head because I imagine the monster's feet with like the claws on them, like going through and popping all the balloons. So yes, every writer will have a different picture in their head.
That's great. I went super literal. Sancho's just the cartoon fetish video.
We're going to have an entire hour of
fetish.
What came to your mind when I said Shannon names a fetish, and then we cartoonize it, and then Sam tells us a short film.
The automotives could be fun. What is that one called? Oh, crap. I don't remember. Automania or something like that, where they're into cars. And I mean into cars.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, that one I was like, whatever. I've heard that 5 billion times. Go watch the movie Crash, too. That takes a whole new spin on it. Is it Crash? Yeah.
I haven't seen Crash, so I don't know. It's a link.
I watched the preview for it when the kids were in the room, and that was enough.
Yikes! I don't think it's a bad movie, but it's got its detractors for certain. So I was out in Arizona, and this is my favorite. We had a meeting in person for work. It was strategic planning deal bobber for next year. And we got there, and we got an interim executive director, and then she'll be the deputy director after that. Had a bag of goodies for us with Play-Doh and crayons and Post-it notes and a little notebook and a pen and a Slinky, all this stuff. And I was like, this is amazing, because I was not the only one sitting there fidgeting the whole time then, because everybody had stuff to fidget with, and I loved it.
That would be awesome.
Yeah. Everybody fidgets different too, since we're talking about that. Everybody like somebody had it's a little mini Slinky, and she just had the end of it and was just spinning it. The way talking, she's just spinning, and then somebody's doing the Play-Doh and just smushing it all over, and somebody else has neatly rolled out the little snakes with the Play-Doh and then put them into pieces.
Squares for me. Anytime I have Play-Doh, I sit there and put it in little squares. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, where you press it.
Yeah. I can't do the Slinkies, though. I can't hold a Slinky for more than 2 or 3 minutes without ruining it. Even the plastic ones, they get ruined in my hands.
Wow. I could definitely ruin a metal one. That thing will get bent all out of shape.
Yep.
And
it'll get that one cross that you can never uncross. And it's always in the middle, and you start there and you start working it toward one end or the other, and you get to the end and realize you just fucked it up even more.
Yep.
Like, wait, where did I go wrong?
When I picked up the Slinky.
One time, and then it was over.
But it was magical when you could make them go down the stairs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never made it all the way down the stairs. My record was like 2/3 of the way down, and then it would stop, or the cat would attack it.
Yep, that would do it. But I had Adobe back when I was a kid at Doberman, so she would have just throttled it. You could just see her wrapped up in a big old Slinky. So it would have been like the least dignified thing she did. that might have been when she got into my back and ate my gum.
Ooh.
A whole pack of like Wrigley's with all the metal and I hate that. I just thought about that, like in your mouth, all those metal like feeling
the
wrappers.
foil wrappers.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just click, and I walk in after school, and there's just this wad of all of it together. I'm glad she didn't swallow it.
Oh, you brought back a memory from years and years ago. I probably was 6-7 years old, and my dog had found a piece of gum and was laying down and holding it between its paws and would bite it and stretch it all the way out, like people do with a piece of cheese. And then it would and eat it all the way back down to its paw and pull it again. And I just sat there and watched my dog do that. I don't know. It was probably 5 minutes, but it felt like hours when I was that age. And I just watched the dog just keep doing that. It was amazing.
I think I would have too. Just all right.
Yeah.
If I see you start to choke, I'll do something. But in the meantime, this is fantastic.
Oh, it never crossed my mind the dog would choke on it. I was too young.
Well, yeah. I was a teenager when she tried to eat my gum, so I was like,
"Oh, you
I
were
could have
mad."
been in so much trouble and had a dead dog.
I can remember the last time I put tinsel on a Christmas tree because I never saw the cat eat the tinsel, but the cat walked by.
Yeah.
The cat walked by and there's like 5 inches of tinsel hanging out of her butt. Just waving in the breeze as the cat walked by. And it was like, we have to do something about that.
That doesn't look good. I don't think that's great.
It was very festive.
Like if you could eat some more on Christmas Eve night and then walk around on Christmas Day with that would be great. Thank you.
Oh, Bugs was a psychotic cat, but
Bugs. You named the cat Bugs.
We named the cat Bugs Bunny.
Come on.
And when I
named a cat Malachi. We paid for that.
It was when I was in graduate school and I would get home and I would walk through the door and I would yell, Bugs a Bunny, who discovered America? That's a line from one of the comics, and the cat would come running to see me. So, God, I haven't thought, this is memory lane today.
Right? I know. You know, Shannon talked earlier about getting the visual in her head. That you put a visual in mine, which I think you put in everybody's there, but mine was a little different. When I was little and we'd play with the tinsel, we'd take it, we'd like stick it in between our front teeth and blow. So you'd get like we'd pretend like we had like dragon's breath and blowing at each other and stuff, you know. MB, you put a totally different visual in my head with your cat.
Well, that's what I'm here for.
Yes, I was imagining the tinsel waving behind.
Just cat gets the zoomies. My cat got the zoomies while I was on a work meeting the other day, and all anybody could hear was on the hardwood with her claws ticking over it. And I was like, "That's just a cat. That's fine." But since we all have like our meetings, you know, are full of cats and dogs and everybody's animals are like, what are you doing?
I saw like a little, I don't know, it was probably like a ripoff of a Temu advertisement or something, but somebody was talking about how a TikTok video or something was talking about how they heard that the whole reason why the cat lays on you and your laptop is because it wants to be doing what you're doing. So she had bought like this little teeny tiny laptop thing and given it to the cat. And then the cat was perfectly happy to have its own laptop.
They have like a cat toy that's a laptop that they can lay on. So, yeah.
This was just a little tiny thing, like, you know, like a compact case. And it had a mirror instead of a screen. And the cat just like laid there and looked in the mirror.
Well, cats are pretty vain. So.
Yeah,
true.
I had a horror story come out just this last week in Carnage House that is about sentient cat vomit. And we had a little book launch thing yesterday where the authors who were in that issue and then the editors and the slush reader all pop in, and we each did like a little reading, and then they talked about what drew them to the story and stuff like that. So it was interesting that we talked about what inspired the story. And they were like, the editors were all, so when we went over your story all together to decide, at least one of us gagged.
Fair.
And they were like, the one guy goes, only somebody who really has had cats and knows cats could have written this story.
The description of the sounds.
Yeah. That's what they look, because when I got the edits and stuff, there were little comments that were like, my God, the wording here.
It was a thoroughly disgusting story.
Yeah.
I can't wait to read that.
It's free online, so on Carnage House. So anybody could go there, and you just go to, it's like a stories tab or something like that. But they were like, we have never had a title of a story be a disgusting sound, because it just called hork. And he was like, I didn't know what fork was, so I had to read it, right? That's what got the attention in the first place. And he goes, then by the end, I got it. Yeah, that was very clear what fork was.
You know, Shannon, I have talked to a lot of writers over the years, and I've heard lots of weird things that have been written, a lot of gross things, a lot of terrible things. That is like the most interesting, grossest thing ever. It's awesome. Because usually it just like goes so far into gross and disgusting or whatever. It's like, yeah, I'm sorry you even told me that. But yours is like gross and disgusting, and I want more.
Yeah. Yeah, they were like, submit more. I said, I don't write a lot of actual like gross horror, right? That's not really where I am. But when I do it with such glee. And I think that glee shines through in those stories because I'm just like, oh, how can I make this grosser? I think I can only think of like 2 gross stories. That one and the porta potty story. So yeah. Other than that, it's not really my thing, right? But I was like, if I write another one, I'll send it to you. It's a fun crowd though. You know, like when you work with good editors or like they're very invested in what they're doing at Carnage House. So
I don't know. It's weird. It's amazing. Everybody's got their own thing, you know, and everybody reacts different to it. I've got a short story that I wrote. I can't believe I'm going to tell you this. I wrote it a long time ago. It never got published. And there's reasons why it never got published. But the title of it was She Made Me Want to Lick Her Teeth.
Okay.
And I've shown this, groups of writers like passing stuff around. And without fail, all of the guys are like, oh, that's creepy. And all of the women just start laughing. And I think it has a lot to do with our like psychology, right? If I put a guy inside the head of another guy who's a real creep, it grosses us out. You know, like that's gross. But unfortunately, women are so used to dealing with it that is such a mild grossness that it's stupid. You know.
That's great. Now I want to read it.
Yeah. Now I'm like, I must know more.
I'll send it to you guys.
Stories of the people in there had their very disturbing bents because it's from the name. It says Carnage House. When you go to the website, it says this is your trigger warning. So I was like, yeah, but I sat on this story forever and ever because it wasn't something I could submit other places. You know, they don't want gross and they don't want, but this is more extreme horror and then gross out horror. And they were like, if nobody else will take it, send it to us. So we want to see it. So they approached all of it with complete and utter glee. And there's one person who's in the same issue. Technically, I mean, it's all online. So issue loosely stated. And hers is, they said she writes very literary. She writes a lot of poetry. And so she read us a little snippet. And yes, it was poetic and literary, even though it wasn't a poem. But it was about the world after, 10 Trump presidencies. Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. So
I don't know what they used to keep him alive that long, but I want some.
I think that's part of the story. I need to go just read all those stories. Now that I heard little snippets of them, I need to go on there and read them. But yeah. Anybody got on any trips other than me?
I was recently in Seattle. That was fun. I went out there to visit a friend I've been friend with since 6th grade, I think. Me and another friend, we went out and spent a couple days with him, went wine tasting, went whiskey tasting.
Nice.
That'll knock you on your butt. Went to a concert, went and saw the gum wall. That I thought that was pretty gross. Until we walked a couple blocks off of like the main tourist street and walked into what looked like a flash mob of people doing drugs. And then I was much more stunned than I was by the gum wall.
Then the gum wall paled in comparison.
Yeah. You know, I've been places and seen stuff. I've never seen anything like that. That was like, imagine a mini like Woodstock, except nobody was pretty.
Huh. Yeah. A flash mob of people doing drugs.
Yeah. It was, it was really eye-opening. And it was like in layers. It was like a whole block down the street. And like in the middle, like up against the building were people that I don't know, I could hardly see them, but they were all on the ground. Some of them could have been dead for all I know. And as you worked out was like the group of people that were obviously messed up. And then you come out a little bit further. It gives like rings and layers, like a solar system. It's like you come out a little bit further, and there were people that were like shooting up right there and smoking stuff out of tinfoil stuff right there. A little bit further, and you can see the people that were like making the drug deals. And a little bit further out, you get to the people that like looked like they wanted to be part of the crowd but hadn't decided to join in yet. And then further out was my friends and I and other tourists that were walking around this as wide as they could, going, "Holy shit!" So that was an experience. Meanwhile, the Space Needle was really cool. I enjoyed that. I liked their glass floor. It was nice to sit up there and look all the way down between your feet and not fall.
Huh.
Yeah, I was trying to shift gears there after talking about the not nice part.
I've never actually been to Seattle. Even when I lived in Oregon, I never made it up to Seattle because we didn't know that we were going to be moving back to Colorado. Like, no. So, yeah, we never even trekked up to Seattle. And I want to because I want to tour the underground city.
Oh, we didn't do that. I would have liked to have done that. Yeah. So most of what I saw was absolutely fantastic. I don't want that one thing to make it sound like, oh, you should never go there. But I do have to say it was very strange to find it that close to where all the tourists are, just walk around the corner in the wrong place and be like, oh, wrong turn,
Right? Yeah, that's crazy. But I could see like 16th Street Mall, which, by the way, I heard that they've reopened like a little piece of 16th Street Mall.
I hadn't heard they closed it, so.
Oh, yeah, they're doing a bunch of renovations.
There was a bunch of construction. I was up there in January.
Yeah, I was up there.
Parts of it were open, but yeah, parts of it were all under construction and hard to get around.
Yeah. I guess it had shut down more after I was there from comments online. So, yeah, now they're opening up little bit by little bit.
It's been a while since I've been there. I haven't been there for probably, 5-6 years. Last time I was there, hopped on the little bus to catch from one end to the other. And it was like 10 o'clock in the morning and some lady just almost puked all over me. And I was like, I don't need to be down here anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. 16th Street Mall is not my favorite. The last time I was there, it was just briefly because we were staying at the Curtis where StokerCon was previously. And we walked to a show that was on 16th Street. So in the Clock Tower building.
I've been in there.
Yeah. So we were only on there long enough. Like you just walk up the side street and then turn on 16th Street Mall because I tend to avoid it. It's one of those places that is neat, but because of where it is and who all's on it and stuff, it becomes less neat.
Yeah. No, and when I went to college downtown at UCD, University of Colorado at Denver. And it was fun to be downtown back then. And I just don't want anything to do with it now. And part of that is probably I'm old, I've noticed that being old has a lot to do with me not wanting to do much anymore. It's like, that's effort. I'm just going to stay home.
And it's a lot of it's stuff you've done before.
Yeah.
Like going to 16th Street Mall. It's like, yeah, been there, done that, have the t-shirt, wore it out, threw it away. Let's move along.
Yeah. I always see, because I'm on a Colorado day trips and destinations thing. People are like, if you're in Boulder, go to Pearl Street. And if you're in Denver, go to 16th Street. And I'm like, tell them what it is so that they know. It's not everybody's cup of tea. I never liked it, even as a teenager. So it's just not the type of thing I enjoy doing. But, ugh.
No, Pearl Street was an experience for me. That's, you sometimes you hear some of the horrible stories about the things that happen and then people getting trampled in a crowd. And that was one of those things. It's like, I don't understand how that happens. It just does not seem right to me. It doesn't seem that I did not go to school in Boulder. I was there visiting friends, and I was there at Pearl Street Mall for the mall crawl back before they got rid of that kind of stuff because of stuff like what I was about to tell you. There were so many people there, so packed tightly together that at one point, it's like a wave went through the crowd, right? Kind of like watching the football stadium. Mm-hmm. And I got picked up off my feet and moved 4 feet to the left and sat back down. I am not a small guy. I'm 6'3", and at that time I was probably 210 pounds or so. And for the people next to me, it's not like the people next to me picked me up. it's like we were all so packed together that it's like it buckled and picked all of us up and moved us. It was scary.
That sounds like a nightmare to me. So
it kind of was.
It very much does.
I don't like it. Also, nightmare to me, by the way, doing the meeting. I had those fidget toys, but they also had like icebreaker things. I absolutely hate those. We had to do splinter groups to do 2 truths and a lie. And we had to do a show and tell. And I was like, first of all, I'm flying here. I'm not going to bring anything. I'm going to break. So I took a picture of the thing and was like, yeah, here's show and tell. This is what happens when you make me do show and tell at a work thing. I do not like icebreaker things. All right. So do you want to start?
I can start. I can even segue by saying, yes, since the last time we met, I have been to upstate New York.
All right.
It was a good trip because I got to my favorite apple orchard in the entire world.
You got your apple cider donut?
Yes, it opened that weekend and I got to go get hot, fresh apple cider donuts. And I've not found any.
I was going to ask if you've tried those ones in Woodland Park yet. Or not Woodland Park, in Black Forest.
I have not yet because I'm fat and I'm lazy.
Okay.
So I don't need a lot of apple cider donuts. Having them 2,000 miles away, it works for me. Yeah. But I heard somebody said the ones at Trader Joe's were good this year. Then somebody else said only if you heat them up in the microwave.
Or an air fryer if you have one.
Which I do. I think everyone does now. You didn't even have to buy it. It just appears in the kitchen.
And we got ours as a reward points turning thing.
Mm-hmm.
So now we had an air fryer and I was like, great.
Yep.
It's great.
So now normally when I travel, and the other memorable thing that happened in upstate New York was I got COVID.
Yeah.
And the people I saw at the beginning of the week didn't get it. The people I saw at the end of the week didn't get it. The people who had one dinner with me on Wednesday all got COVID from me.
Maybe they didn't get it from you then.
I would like to think that, but my sister's pretty convinced I gave it to her on purpose. So would that I had those godlike powers. So anyway, usually when I travel, I talk about the place I just traveled to, but I'm not going to do that this time because I talk about upstate New York a lot.
I kind of am going to do that.
We'll see. So we're going to time travel, but just a little bit. So we're going to go back to 1979, June of 1979. So Pope John Paul II had visited his native Poland, which made him the first pope to visit a communist country. Isn't that exciting? Fleetwood Mac recorded Tusk. John Wayne died, which
made some people really sad.
Yep, it did.
Well, I remember that. It made me sad.
It made my mom very sad. She was a huge John Wayne fan.
It probably made me sad then, but now not so much because I know what he was like. So
yeah.
But anyway,
I'm sure my mom's still sad about it. So I'm not going to tell her anything about what it was like.
Yes. Here's something I didn't realize. McDonald's introduced the Happy Meal in 1979. And Home Depot opened their first 2 stores in Georgia.
Wow. I didn't know Home Depot had been around that long, really.
They just seem like they've always been there now.
Oh.
But I didn't know they started in Georgia. But since we're talking about Georgia, here we go. June of 1979, a man approached the Elberton Granite Finishing Company, claiming to represent a small group of loyal Americans. Using the name Robert C. Christian, he commissioned a structure of standing stones that could withstand a cataclysmic event and that would function as a compass, calendar, and clock. So I'm like, that's a lot to ask from some standing stones, I think. The local bank manager is a man named Wyatt Martin, and he handled all the financial transactions that had to take place. He knew Christian's real identity and said he would take it to his grave. He vowed never to reveal the true identity of Robert Christian. And
why was it a secret?
I don't even know. Even after researching this, I can't tell you why the guy had to use a false name. So there was over the years, there's been some wild speculation about who actually paid to have this built. Some people thought it was Ted Turner. And some people thought it was L. Ron Hubbard.
That almost makes more sense. But
yes, actually, L. Ron Hubbard would be on brand.
yeah.
I don't know. It seems pretty altruistic. There wasn't any money made by that, right? So
that is true. So Joe Fendley was the guy who was running Elberton Granite, and he thought the guy was a nutter. So he gives them this preposterously high quote for the work. At that time, it was about a little upwards of $100,000, which in today money would be like almost $500,000. And he thought that would discourage the guy. Nope. Oh, no. Christian looked at several locations in Georgia and surrounding states, but they rapidly ruled out surrounding states because transporting the stones would have required special clearance from the DOT, from the Department of Transportation, to carry something that heavy on public roads. Because Elberton is like the granite capital of the universe. They might say the United States. I'm going with the whole universe. They're all about granite.
It's a pretty intense statement.
I stand by it.
We also have granite.
Yes.
I speak granite.
So Christian said his group had been planning the monument for the last 20 years, but they wanted to remain anonymous. He said they chose the spot in Elbert County because of its abundance of local granite, the rural nature of its landscape, its mild climate, and family ties to the region. It just gets deeper. Just put on your boots. We're wading in. So when he first showed up, he had a little model. It was made out of cardboard or paper or something. That's long since gone. But then he gave the granite company a scale model. It looks like it's made out of bricks. That's kind of what it was. And he also gave them 10 pages of specifications. So 5 acres were purchased from a local farmer. Okay, so in the beginning of the story, 5 acres were purchased from a local farmer, and the family was given lifetime cattle grazing rights on the site. And you're like, oh, yeah, some local farmer, no problem. Actually, it was a buddy of the guy who owned the granite company. The guy who owned the granite company said to his friend, hey, we're looking for a place to build this monument. You want to make some money? That's how that worked.
Yeah.
That's how that always
works. You're
works.
still able to graze your cattle there.
Yeah.
You made some money. Why not?
So and for everyone who's curious, because I was, it's off Georgia State Route 77, about 7 miles north of Elberton, which is in eastern Georgia. It's very rural, and it's near the South Carolina state line. And I'm like, I could have driven. Had I but known, I could have driven through there.
Yep.
Dang.
You probably did and went, I wonder what that pile of rocks is.
That's entirely possible. Anyway, there were 4 upright stones. They were 19 feet, 3 inches tall. And there was a list of 10 guidelines engraved onto each side in a total of 8 languages. So 1 language on each side of the stone. And the languages they chose were English, Spanish, Swahili, Hindi, Hebrew, Arabic, traditional Chinese, and Russian. Huh. Yeah. So these inscriptions were meant to guide humanity after something like a nuclear war. So here's the list. Maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. Yeah, it was already in the world population was already in the billions by then. So that's the question everybody comes back to is, but what are you going to do with the rest of the people? Now,
there's a Bond villain for this stone.
Well, most people were like, if this is after some kind of nuclear war, which was really what everybody was thinking it was going to happen at that time, then of course it would wipe out a lot of the Earth's population. But this was saying, this is your top limit. You can't go any further. Guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. Unite humanity with a living new language. Rule passion, faith, tradition, and all things with tempered reason. Protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts. Let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court. Avoid petty laws and useless officials. Balance personal rights with social duties. prize truth, beauty, love, seeking harmony with the infinite, and be not a cancer on the earth. Leave room for nature. Leave room for nature. They said that twice.
This all sounds very 70s.
It does. So there was this cracked me up. There's an additional granite ledger that, and I'm gesturing now so everybody listening can just imagine what I'm gesturing. It was this big flat stone that sat in the ground and gave facts about the monument, as well as referencing a time capsule buried beneath it. So here's the thing. It said a time capsule buried on, and then it was blank, to be dug up on, and that was blank. So there never was a time capsule buried there because they looked later. Apparently, grammar, punctuation, and spelling was pretty freely ignored on this ledger. And around the edges, in Babylonian, Classical Greek, Sanskrit, and ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics, it said, "Let these be guidestones to an age of reason." Because I'm thinking, in the event of a nuclear war, the only people who will be around afterward will be the ones who can read the dead languages.
Well, I was thinking, if you're going to take the time to figure out to translate something in ancient Babylonian, why wouldn't you get the grammar right in English, right?
Yeah, and it was just facts about how much the stones weighed and how tall they were and how to look through there were channels and holes, and the sun would shine a certain way on both the shortest and the longest day of the year. So if civilization was destroyed, you could figure out the shortest and longest day and reestablish the calendar. I think if you've lost the ability to have a calendar, that's not your most pressing worry.
No.
Well, it's not like our calendar's the best one anyway.
Let's do the Mayan one.
Yeah. So for all of the ambition of this, what this was supposed to accomplish, here's a quote that put it into perspective for me. The 4 outer stones were oriented to mark the limits of the 18.6 year lunar declination cycle, which we're all intimately familiar with.
I would definitely figure that out after an apocalypse.
Yes. The center column featured a hole drilled in an angle from one side to the other, through which the North Star could be seen. So the one guy said, so you can reestablish a compass. That's what he said. The same pillar had a slot carved through it, which was aligned with the sun's solstices and equinoxes. A 7/8 inch aperture in the capstone allowed a ray of sun to pass through at noon each day, shining a beam on the center stone, indicating the day of the year. It's like the Swiss Army knife of stone monolith.
I want a copy.
One of the things, the guy who, this Robert Christian, one of the things he said was that he was inspired by Stonehenge. So what I thought was funny was that a University of Georgia astronomer, Loris Magnani, referred to these features as mediocre at best and sees them as an abacus compared to Stonehenge's computer. So there's smack talk in the monolithic world.
Who knew? Honestly, it should have been expected. There's smack talk in every world.
That's right. And you can take a picture of your feet there. I'm going to work that in everywhere now.
I'm pretty sure you can buy the balloons at Stonehenge. I don't know about at this place.
So the completed monument, they actually put this together pretty quickly. It took less than a year. The completed monument was unveiled on March 22nd, 1980. Christian later deeded the land over to the county because he said he thought the county government was going to be, if the rest of the world was wiped out, county government would survive. I don't know how he made these decisions. But in 1981, they had to erect a barbed wire fence around it to keep cattle from using it as a scratching post. I don't know why that just cracks me up. The idea, because I can't imagine, I have this image of Stonehenge and a cow rubbing on Stonehenge and nothing happens. And this thing, they're worried if a cow rubs against it, it's going to topple like Tinker Toys.
Well, maybe Stonehenge used to be like nice and polished and pretty, and then too many cows rubbed against it. That's why it looks like this now.
So, what was going on in the early 1980s that could warp people's perception of the monument? is there anything we've talked about on this podcast 1,000 times? Could it be the satanic panic? Of course it could. A local minister, who I think had too much time on his hands and too much imagination, claimed that it would be used for satanic worship and that a sacrifice on the site was surely imminent. However, they always made it a point of saying, your cattle is going to be sacrificed here. I'm like, are you sure it's not just a barbecue? It was always cattle. So the sandblaster who etched all the words into the monument was a man named Charlie Clamp. And he reported hearing strange music and disjointed voices while he was doing the work. I mean, it couldn't have been the side effect of hundreds of hours of sandblasting languages you are not familiar with into the stone. And why are we blaming the writers for the grammar and not the guy who actually embedded it into the stone? So anyway, as recently, this just kills me. As recently as 2022, which was 2 years ago, a candidate in the Georgia governor's race, Candace Taylor, called the monument satanic in a campaign ad and vowed to get it removed. But this was not until after she connected the concept of controlling the population to COVID. Because in somewhere on the stone, it said controlling the population. That's what COVID was for.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bunch of rocks.
She wasn't the first one saying that.
No. Well, to connect to these rocks, yes. Yeah. But bunch of rocks in a field. But that's the issue she chose to put in her televised campaign ad. Somebody called it the 10 Commandments of the Antichrist.
Oh, no. Now I actually want to write them.
And people claimed that witches were meeting there and dancing around the stones.
Naked.
They didn't specify.
You know they were thinking it.
Always assume witches dance naked, and witches are like, it's breezy.
She's like, you know what? It's cold outside, bitches.
My bits do not need to be frostbitten. Thank you very much. And actually, it was really funny. One of the guys from the documentary said, yes, I was told that some people have had their wedding ceremonies up there. And he goes, who cares? It's public property. They can have their wedding. They didn't do anything untoward. Why shouldn't they get married there? He goes, and I don't care what their religion was. I love a cranky old man in a documentary.
Right. Who just doesn't give a shit.
Yep.
He's like, I'm not going to play with your conspiracy theories. I don't care.
So the New World Order and the reference to a much smaller world population led some to believe that the backers of the stone believed in abortion. And I'm like, what? Just randomly performing them? I'm just...
Yes, at the stones.
At the stones, yes.
Sacrifices.
Yeah.
And or genocide.
2 for 1.
So in 1986, R.C. Christian wrote a book called Common Sense Renewed. And it's really funny. The book is not funny, but there were only 100 printed, and you can't really get them now. But one of the quotes from the book was, our knowledge has outstripped wisdom, which reminded me of Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park when he says,
Ian Malcolm.
Yes, just because we can, nobody has stopped to ask if we should.
Right. We've said that a lot in the last few years every time.
Yes. Daily, it seems like. The population control in the book, that needed to be handled by the various world governments. And he called overpopulation an evil that must not be tolerated. And he advocated limiting couples to 1 child because that worked well for China.
Did great, yeah.
But the monument didn't start being defaced with spray paint and graffiti until 2008, which is a long time for it to stand, with nothing happening. I'm guessing something happened locally that drastically increased the boredom of local teenagers. And that's why it started getting graffitied.
It was probably urban sprawl. They finally lived close to it.
That could also be. It included such hits as Death to the New World Order and I Am Isis, Goddess of Love. Talk about your threatening statements.
Oh my gosh.
And at that point, in 2014, the FBI was contacted and security cameras were installed. So on July 6, 2022, a bomb was detonated around 4 a.m. at the site, causing damage to one of the stones plus the capstone. So they had to take it all down. They had to topple it all because it was so unsafe to have it.
Yeah. Once again, we see what political rhetoric does to the people stupid enough to
listen to
buy it.
Mm-hmm. The stones were dismantled later that day due to safety concerns, and the GBI was called in to help with the investigation. I got to make some kind of Will Trent reference here, because Will Trent could have gotten to the bottom of this. That's all I'm going to say. Because the GBI could not, or hasn't. The culprits have never been identified or caught. Elberton has vowed to rebuild, but it doesn't look good. The city council voted to return the land to the original farmer. So, and there was, on the camera, they saw a vehicle leaving.
How old is that farmer now?
It's the family.
Okay. He's like, dang.
But he was in the documentary. So the true identity of Robert C. Christian remains a mystery. But I'm going to go with what they said in the documentary, because a large number of the people who were involved with the project were Masons. Mm-hmm. The guys in the banker and the builder and all that. There was a speculation about a link to Freemasonry. However, if you've ever lived in a small town, if one guy becomes a Mason, all of his buddies become Masons. It's not, small towns. There was a question of whether or not Christian represented a group of Rosicrucians. Rosicrucians. Yeah. I don't have the time or the brain space to dive into the Masons or the Rosicrucians right now. So
I think those are bottomless wells.
Right?
Yeah.
I would totally get derailed while researching it. And then I'd be like, what information do I choose to put out on just a...
Yeah. And I looked at it because I was like, what can I say about... No, nothing. I can't even Wikipedia goes, just give the fuck up. You can't summarize it.
It was like trying to do Elizabeth Bathory, right? And
yeah.
I was like, oh, fuck, this is all political. Wait a second, I didn't know.
So the banker who made the loan, who handled all the financial transactions, and did I write down when I did not. I didn't write down when the documentary was made, but he was interviewed extensively for the documentary. He really, oh my God, he talks so slow. I was like, how do I speed this up? He has a suitcase full of documents about the building of the monument, and still is like, I'm not going to tell. I will not give you his real name or any identifying information. But he did open the suitcase. And then it wasn't a suitcase. It looked like a suitcase. It had one of the original IBM computers in it. So, it's big, rectangular. So he did say he would open it, and he would show them that it was full of paper. Woo! That was almost like opening Truman Capote's vault for excitement.
Geraldo was there.
And he looks at it and he's leaning over and he goes, looks like I threw some old bank statements in there too. This guy has no clue what's in there. So they got the documentarians were not allowed to get in and touch anything, but they took a lot of video. They took some pictures. So there was, they did get a postmark that was from a town in Iowa. And then they got on one of the envelopes, there was a return address from somewhere in Iowa. So there was some suspicion. They traced it back to a man named Robert Merriman as Christian, but it seems more likely that he wrote the book that was published under Christian's name. But the dates of when he died and when the letters were still coming from Christian didn't match up. But they went to the return address that led them to a home once owned by Dr. Herbert H. Kirsten. He was passionate about controlling the world's population, but was also a rabid racist and a practicing Catholic. He was a ball of what is the word I want? My brain just went, fuck you. Contradiction.
Yeah.
He believed in eugenics. He believed in not letting inferior and lazy individuals procreate. He was a big fan of China's one-child policy. And they're pretty certain that they can't absolutely prove it because there's nobody who can say yes or no. And the banker will not say, but they're pretty sure that Dr. Kirsten was the man who came and had the stones built. But it's just people lost their shit and made up so many stories about just some guy spent an obscene amount of money to build a monument, and that's all it took. We need to build a monument.
Yeah.
That's what I want to do.
Maybe that'll sell a book or two. I don't know, because you said less than 100 of his were, never mind. That's not worth it.
Right?
Doesn't have that much reach.
Yeah. So my sources were, actually, I have to give credit to Thing too, because she suggested the topic. She's like, have you talked about the Georgia Guidestones? I said, I'm going to say no, because I don't know what they are. Wikipedia, of course. The documentary is called Dark Clouds Over Elberton, the true story of the Georgia Guidestones. And I also got quite a bit of interesting information off of CNN, of all places.
All right.
So that
is the Georgia Guidestones.
It's the Georgia Guidestones.
Where do we build a monolith?
Well, you need a hilltop.
The middle of U Valley Park.
Okay.
There's just all these spots where you just go like, huh? What is this?
You have to put it someplace where it's inconvenient to get to graffiti.
Well, I wouldn't be at U Valley Park probably. Although I will say I don't see any graffiti out there. So apparently the teenagers around here are respectful. We never graffitied. We would go to the swing rope that was out there, but we didn't.
I was recently reminded of some graffitiing I did, but it was with chalk, so it washes off.
Oh.
So
it doesn't even count as graffitiing if it's chalk.
Yes. All I'm going to say.
Well, now I've got lots of imaginations of what she drew there. That's.
I was in college. That's all you need to know.
I did a drive-by penising. Chocolate syrup on there.
What did you penis?
Well, this is terrible. It was somebody's parents' car. Really, probably. It probably wasn't her. She was flirting with my man. So their yard got forked, and they just got a drive-by penising with chocolate syrup.
What does it mean that you forked their yard?
So you stick the forks, plastic forks into it, and then you break off the handle, and it's majorly inconvenient because there's. Yeah.
Okay. I was like, how did you even drive them into the ground here? The ground is like granite.
It must have been the right time of year. I don't know.
Perhaps they watered regularly.
I never even TP'd anybody, but I did that. And it was a coworker who was like, "Putting with your man, let's go." And she had the Hershey syrup and she had the fork. And I was like, okay.
That's the kind of friend we all need.
Yeah.
If you're thinking of starting a podcast or even just starting to research it, Buzzsprout is your go-to source for information and hosting. They have tons of videos and write-ups on everything you need to know about recording and distributing a podcast, and they even provide easy ways to get analytics on how your podcast is doing. We use Buzzsprout for our podcast hosting, and through them we've been able to connect with tons of resources and distributors. Following a link in the show notes lets Buzzsprout know we sent you, gets you a $20 Amazon gift card if you sign up for a paid plan, and helps support our show. A win-win. Not only do they help you get started, but they also do small things to encourage you, such as awarding you badges as you hit various milestones. Join over 100,000 podcasters already using Buzzsprout to get their message out to the world.
All right, we're going to hand it over to
you guys are looking at me expectantly. Here I am, like, enjoying this podcast that I listen to you guys do all the time. I'm like, oh, crap, it's my turn. Yeah, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I kind of warned you guys beforehand I was going to do something a little bit different. I have no sources. This is almost all secondhand, which puts it at hearsay and theoretically pushes it towards libel as well. So I'm not going to use any names. So if I use any names, ignore it. And if you think any of this might be true and you want to go research it, just assume it's fiction.
Okay.
When I was in middle school, about 1983, I met this girl who was a year younger than me. And middle school's like that's the age where some of us are shaving and wearing bras and some of us are barely out of diapers and we're all in the same class together.
Yeah.
And I started shaving in 6th grade. Not that means anything other than I hit my full height in 6th grade and I was done. And she was somebody who was exactly the opposite. She was a year younger than me, but looked like she could have been 5-6 years younger than me. So I had no interest at all when she flirted with me. But she was so nice. She was the very nicest person. And she had asked me out. I don't remember if it was a Sadie Hawkins Day dance or what it was, but she was just like shaking like a leaf when she asked me out. Like the voice was quivering and everything. And of course, I turned her down. But she was so nice. I did my best to always be friendly to her. But it was like I always tried to walk that line of like not leading her on too, which is kind of weird. It makes me sound like I'm a little stuck up or something. It's not like this was a regular occurrence in my life that somebody asked me out and I like had to walk the line. It's not, look at me. I'm not a pretty woman. This did not happen to me often. Pretty women, I get it. Happens to them all the time. Got to walk that line of being nice and saying no.
Yeah.
Anyway, we remained friends to the point where I remember she had made like a little wooden penguin in wood shop that she gave me, like just out of the blue to give to me, which I'm sure is because back then I was wearing like the Bill and Opus for President t-shirt. I had like Opus the Penguin shirt that I wore probably twice a week, that kind of stuff. And when I went to high school, I didn't see her for another year because she was a grade behind me. And when she came up to high school, it was kind of the same thing. She didn't flirt with me anymore. I didn't flirt with her either. But we said hi. We talked. I knew who she was. And she had a boyfriend. I was very excited for her that she had a boyfriend. This guy looked like, I don't know, like if I tell you a Swede lumberjack, you picture like this great big burly blonde guy with rugged jaw, and that was him. And they were a great couple. And they were together all the way through high school while I was there. If they broke up afterwards, I don't really know much about it. My sister started going to school at the high school the year I was a senior. They changed the whole middle school, junior high school thing. And when I first started the high school, it was sophomore, junior, seniors only. The year I was a senior, they brought up freshmen and sophomores. So not only did we get like a new class, it's like all of a sudden half the school was new. So my sister knew who she was, knew that she and I talked. Sorry, I'm going to get confusing with the pronouns here because, like I said, I didn't want to say any names. After I graduated, went to college, my sister knew that I would want to know this and told me, sorry, my sister knew my friend's little brother. They were in the same class together. And that's where this information came from. My friend had apparently used a gun to the head and tried to commit suicide.
Oh.
Part of the reason why I bring this up is I realize that this isn't going to be broadcast until October. We're recording it in September. September is National Suicide Awareness Month. But there's a lot more to it than that. It didn't kill her. She ended up in the hospital in intensive care, ICU, all that kind of stuff. And, my sister eventually came back and told me that they had found out why she had done this. She had done this because her father had been molesting her. And as I got updates from my sister, it went from, sorry, I almost said a name. It went from they didn't expect her to survive to she was going to survive, but she would probably be, in a vegetative state, to actually she's doing pretty well, to she might live a normal life, to she might make a full recovery.
Wow.
Which is just absolutely amazing. And, this is the course of over months that I'm getting these updates from my sister through the little brother. And I keep thinking, I should go see her in the hospital. I should go talk to her. But at the same time, it's like, what kind of message does that send? And she's got a boyfriend and she's got family. And then I never got the chance to go see her because they let her father go see her. And her father smothered her with a pillow and then killed himself.
Oh, my God.
Which to me, it's like, at that point, it's like, we already knew why she had tried to kill herself. Why the hell would you let this person in the same room with her, let alone unsupervised? So anyway, like I said, this is a lot of hearsay, right? I tried to look this up. I couldn't find any newspaper articles. I know dates. I know dates and I know names. All I was able to find was one obituary for the mother. And I was able to find a gravestone. And the thing is it's one of the military gravestones. And it's got the father's name on it and the name of the wife and both children on the back of the headstone, which means even after he did this to her, the only gravestone she has is on his gravestone. And it just makes me sick.
That's offensive.
And part of it, pardon?
It's offensive.
Yeah, it makes me absolutely sick. I'm offended by it. And I'm offended that she didn't have an obituary. I'm offended that I can't give you her name because I can't, it's not like I had full access to police records or anything like that. But, you know, when this happened back in this was the late 80s, that kind of thing, the incest was still like swept under the carpet. People didn't talk about it. It wasn't and suicide, kind of the same thing. It was like, oh, that's too bad. And then we'd sweep it under the carpet and move on. And I feel like there's just nothing out there. None of those people are still alive. She's gone. Her brother's gone. Her mother's gone. Her father's gone. And now my sister's gone. So I can't even cite my sister as a source because it's secondhand hearsay that I'm saying my sister told me this stuff. So then it's like, do I dare say this stuff? Who of her family is still out there that I don't know about that even knows anything about this, that would be so horribly offended that I would say such a horrible thing about her father? Because there's no record of it anywhere. And to me, I just feel like that is the most horrible thing. So anyway, with this being a National Suicide Prevention Month, I just wanted to say, keep your eyes out, keep your ears open, pay attention to the people around you, be a safe person. Anyway, I warned you guys it would be a little heavy. Mostly it's heavy for me because I knew people.
Right.
So,
it's a terrible situation, but also it's your sister's loss is fresh too.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And it really messed up the younger brother too. I mean, it all but destroyed his life. He went down in the drugs and alcohol, and he died early. So and the mother lived another 10 years or so after the youngest son died. But still, how terrible was that for her too? Anyway, yes. Sorry. I'll give you guys a chance.
Hopefully she didn't know, because otherwise it means she allowed it to happen, So
yeah, well, I mean, she would have had to have known afterwards because I knew. So
yeah.
So anyway, I'm going to lighten things a little bit, and I'm going to give you another thing that's hearsay, and I'm also going to give no more names. This one I got from somebody else. I used to work in corrections. And once upon a time, one of the files that came across my desk for somebody I was working with was for this old timer. The file was that you guys can't see my hands on the radio, or is it the radio? I'm old on the podcast, but it's like the size of a phone book. And his first conviction was for obscenities on the telephone, which gives you an idea of how long ago that was. Now nobody blink twice or think anything of it, but he was convicted and did time for obscenities on the telephone. By the time I knew the man, he was finishing up his parole for his third life sentence. And I was talking to somebody that had dealt with this guy before. He's like, oh, let me tell you a story. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with what a halfway house is, but I'll give a brief overview for anybody that doesn't know. A halfway house is typically a place that when somebody comes out of prison, they don't have any place to live. They don't have a job. They go to a halfway house, which is like halfway back out into society to get a chance to get on their feet and become a productive member of society again. Or at least that's once upon a time what they were. Now they're actually like a minimum security prison. People get sentenced directly to halfway houses, which I think is silly. So anyway, apparently one night, this gentleman decided that he was going to escape the halfway house, which is about as easy as walking out the front door where nobody's looking, because that's what it is. And he went to the neighbor's house and broke into their car and didn't want to wake anybody up because it's in a neighborhood. Most halfway houses are in a neighborhood. A lot of people think they're like living next to a group home, and it's a halfway house. So anyway, he puts it in neutral, backs it out of the driveway, turns it around, starts pushing it down the street, and can't get it started. He tries to pop start it, which, for you young kids out there that have only seen electronic cars, the old ones used to be able to force the engine to fire and start up by putting it in gear while it was moving. Now, if you manage to do that, the computer chip automatically shuts the car down and says, no, you can't do that.
It's much harder on poor people, because when I first moved out with my husband, we had to do that to our, we had to pop start that puppy.
Yes, I used to have a Pinto, and about half the time my battery wouldn't work, so I'd pop start it and then figure out how to get it working later after school.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, he keeps trying to get it started, and he my understanding is he was tried to hotwire it and spark it a little bit, and it wasn't working, so he was trying to pop start it. And a police officer pulled up behind him and wanted to know if he was having car problems. And he was like, well, I just, can't get the car started. And the police officers, well, let me give you a little push. So they get behind the bumper to bumper of the cop car and start pushing it and get it up to speed for a good pop start. Still doesn't start. So the police officer was like, well, let's pop the hood and see what's going on in there. So they popped the hood, and there's no motor in the car. Because the neighbors had been working on the car, and he stole a car that didn't have a motor in it.
That's perfection.
And I've always wondered what it would have been to like be standing there and see the look on the cop's face, and then see the look. I almost said the guy's name. See the look on this guy's face, and then see them as they looked at each other. It's like, how do you explain that one? It's like, yeah, just take me.
I know. The cartoon music would start, and they'd run and chase each other around the car.
The Keystone Cops music.
That's right.
No, I wanted to give you guys something a little more humorous. There were so many things I was so excited when you asked me to come on. There were so many things I wanted to talk about. It's like the first thing that popped into my head was like the Green Children of Woolpit. And I was like, I think you guys already talked about them. I seem to remember you guys talked about them.
Yeah, I think I did.
Yeah.
But then I came across two things. I'm going to go quick because I wanted to give you some happier things. I came across two things I haven't heard you guys talk about, and I may have missed. I haven't heard all of them. I tried to get all caught up. You guys have done a lot.
This is our 172nd.
Which is like 615 hours worth of talking, something like that.
That's a lot.
So did you guys ever hear of the I know you guys have heard of the molasses flood that happened when the big
the Molassacre.
There was something similar that happened in Dublin in June 18th, 1875. There was a river of whiskey that ran through the streets. There was a big fire. And what is it? It was called, I got this information from the Irish Times, who actually reported on it when it happened. It was Malone's Malt House and Bonded Storehouse on Chamber Street, where some 5,000 barrels of whiskey and other spirits were being stored. And there was a fire. And of course, whiskey barrels are flammable.
Yeah. Very.
Just a little.
So whatever happened. And at one point, the flow measured 2 feet wide and 6 inches deep and stretched more than 400 meters down one side of Mill Street. It is stated, and this is a quote, it is stated that caps, porringers, which is like a little tiny kind of bowl, and other vessels were in great requisition to scoop up the liquor as it flowed from the burning premises. And as disgusting as it may seem, some fellows were observed to take off their boots and use them as drinking cups.
Yeah.
I think I had heard of that.
Yeah.
This is the part that cracks me up. In all, 13 people are understood to have died as a result of the fire. None of the deceased perished in the flames, nor did they die of smoke inhalation. Each succumbed to alcohol poisoning from drinking freely of the derelict whiskey.
Oh, how much whiskey do you have to drink to die?
13 people doing that too, out of their shoes.
Well, those are just the ones that died.
Yeah.
I think it was probably all of Dublin. Like, hey.
Just like everybody was drunk for a while, even the animals. Any pets that were around there and random cows.
All right, I want to throw one last thing at you guys because I was so excited that you invited me on, and I didn't know if you'd invite me on again, or if you did, it wouldn't be for years and years. Recently, I stumbled across an article from CNN about the Ig Nobel Prizes. I don't know if it's pronounced Nobel or Nobel, but it's Ig Nobel, I guess, IG. And it was just like, have you guys ever heard of those?
I feel like I maybe vaguely have, but yeah, I don't really have details or anything.
So according to Wikipedia, like I said, I stumbled across it on CNN, a CNN article, but according to Wikipedia, it was created. Oh, wait, I lost it.
That's okay, because I can edit out quiet space.
Well, I can keep talking the whole time, so it's not really quiet space. But anyway, it was. I had a specific quote for why they created it, and it was clever. But it was basically like to celebrate discoveries that couldn't be repeated or probably shouldn't be repeated. You know, and some of the fun things they were reporting on. So the European-wide research team was awarded the Probability Prize for conducting 750,000 experiments that demonstrated that a coin tends to land on the same side it started when it's flipped. And Jacob White and Philippe Yamashita won the Botany Prize for finding evidence that some real plants attempt to mimic the leaves of nearby fake plants, which I thought was really interesting. A live demonstration included the biology prize for exploding a paper bag next to a cat that's standing on the back of a cow to explore the reasons for cows spewing their milk.
It's so oddly specific.
But apparently the people that won this year, they won because they discovered that there are some mammals that can breathe through their anuses.
Great.
Wow. Like, I mean, I've heard the expression "you're talking out of your ass," but
you're also breathing out of it.
Apparently you can.
Oh, wait. All right. I almost missed this one. So on Wikipedia, it talks about some of the things that were awarded in the past. One of them was the discovery that the presence of humans tend to sexually arouse ostriches.
I'm never going to feel the same if I'm around an ostrich again. Don't look away.
Okay, so thank you for letting me talk about all kinds of strange, crazy shit and a little bit of serious stuff.
I like it, but can you imagine being the people who research and find the weird things to award this to every year? Look, that would be the best job.
Yes.
But also hard.
Because, the first thing I'd be like is, hey, where'd you get the idea to try to study this? What made you think that ostriches were excited around you?
Right.
Who did you get?
Dolphins are, but
what I would want to know is who did you get to fund this research, and how exactly did you describe it to them?
What was your proposal? Like, can I read it?
And what is their name and contact information? I mean, if they're just going to give money away.
If you're concerned about spewed milk, why so specifically?
Let's
conduct this with a paper bag and a cat.
Yeah, that's just.
I know, the one with the mammals breathing through their anus. I'd be right there saying, what happens if you use helium?
And if they breathe in that way and then talk, does it work? Do they still talk with the helium sound?
To their stomach gurgles get really loud and high pitched.
Did it say which mammals?
No, I don't believe it did.
Oh, because mammal covers a lot of.
They're like, don't put that out there. We're going to write a paper. Don't mess up our paper.
I mean, is it field mice? Is it?
I mean, I grew up absolutely adoring like the Guinness Book of World Records, and I had to look through it every single year. I tried that as an adult though, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. too bored. And a lot of these answers are the same for this whole time. All right.
No, I was going through the CNN article really quick. It doesn't look like it says specifically which mammals because it was too busy like summarizing everything.
It's like, let us give you the very serious details. This is how it works. I mean, it's all connected. It's all connected eventually. So it's not quite as absurd, but like, what is that? What is the pathway there? As somebody who loved anatomy and physiology, I'm like, wait, that would have to be like all the way up and then back down through.
I bet it's hippopotamuses.
Do you remember Little Shop of Horrors? Remember Steve Martin's like the version of the dentist with the nitrous oxide? I bet he would try it.
He would try. Yes. He would try a lot of things. He would have done the alcohol soaked tampons if he could. But all right.
I like that. You're just going to drop that in there with no explanation, no further comment. Just
that's what the goog is for. You're gonna hear that? It has a name. There is like a term for doing it. That was. I feel like that's something that probably random teenage girls are trying. I don't know who does it, but anyway. My story today.
Okay.
I'm moving on. My story today.
I'm glad you're moving on because I'm sitting over here biting my tongue so hard.
This is inspired by a coworker who I will not name. And we had to do the show and tell nightmare thing. That was mine. And the thing about working with a bunch of people with a lot of trauma, because that is just kind of the nature of the folks that I work with and the folks who are drawn to this, because I work in harm reduction. And a lot of my coworkers are people who actively use drugs, people who have previously used drugs and have been in recovery, and just things of that nature. People who have come from gangs, so just a lot of trauma in this one company. But so we do show and tell, and that became some huge trauma share for everybody. But a lot of interesting things, of course, too. I work with interesting people. I don't think any of these people have just had a dull life. It's just not how that type of thing works. It's not usually the bored people that fall into chaotic use of substances and all of that. That's not how that works. But anyway, this one coworker had an article, and it was sharing about the Yavapai Nation standing up against the FBI. And the briefest explanation here is the FBI are who the federal government sent to do regulations and legal shit on reservations. So there was a lot of FBI versus Native American stuff that went down. And I want to do some of that in the future. And I really haven't done any of that. And really lately, I get so frustrated. I'm like, is AIM still going? I'm going to go join AIM. If not, I'm restarting it, the American Indian movement. So anyway, his father was involved in this standoff. And I just found that incredibly intriguing. And I wanted to look up this standoff because I hadn't really heard of it before. And it's really a small fry against all of the bigger Alcatraz and all of that happened. But it had massive ripples. And so it actually, this tiny little tribe, this was not a big tribe, this was not a heavily populated reservation, did something big. And it could have gone very, very wrong. And as he pointed out, he could have not been here had it gone differently. These people could have been wiped out. So I'm covering the Fort McDowell Yavapai Nation standoff. It was 6 a.m. on May 12th, 1992. A tribal elder named Ella Doka had agreed to drive a friend to work, but when she passed by the casino on the Fort McDowell Yavapai Nation, she saw Mayflower moving trucks. I want you all to think about that irony. Parked out front with men loading the tribe's slot machines onto them. She made some phone calls, and the recipients made phone calls, and so on and so forth, until the news spread throughout the Yavapai Nation. Bring your cars, bring your trucks, bring your tractors, come to the casino. So tribal citizens brought all of those things and started parking them around the moving trucks to block them in. The tribal-owned sand and gravel company sent its giant trucks over to help as well, and they blocked the one way out with those giant trucks. The numbers swelled, with just shy of 200 people blocking the movers after a while. Some of these folks didn't have phones, but had been reached by their fellow tribal members who had started driving around to knock on doors and get people out to help. But the movers weren't the only ones around that day. About 150 FBI agents stood around in their labeled jackets, holding weapons on those surrounding the moving trucks. There was a SWAT sniper on the casino's roof. They'd come in cars, of course, and these were just as blocked as the moving trucks. The FBI had shown up that morning as employees worked to prepare for the day. One of the managers luckily saw them coming and had the money removed from the machines and hidden before the agents could get inside to remove them. Tribal lawyers had already been fighting with the government about the machines, and everyone had been alert to actions that had been threatened. So this wasn't completely out of nowhere, but it certainly wasn't announced. They didn't know they were coming that day. There was no forewarning. It's just that they were already waiting for some shit to go down. News stories in the 90s describe Fort McDowell, which at the time was called Fort McDowell Mojave Apache Tribe, but is now the Fort McDowell Yavapai Nation, as being just 40 square miles. The approximately 400 residents lived in poverty. They had grown up with dirt floors in their homes and no plumbing or electrical connectivity in many of those homes. The roads had only been paved in the 70s, and kids had to be bused to Phoenix via narrow roads until the 80s. Their current website shows the same square footage, but 950 members, making it a smaller tribe. The Yavapai had fought previous battles with the overreaching federal and state governments. A series of laws had stripped states' rights over sovereign tribal lands, and people were angry about these limitations. In the 1970s, desperate for a way to make money for tribes to provide support to their members, tribes around the nation had started opening bingo halls. Then came the slot machines. In 1976, the Supreme Court ruled that states couldn't charge owners of tribal property taxes. So the state couldn't tax them, feds could. In 1987, the Supreme Court ruled that states couldn't do anything to regulate tribal gambling, gaming, any of that. So the state couldn't do anything about it. They were sovereign nations. That actually means jack shit in this nation because we constantly violate that sovereignty. But anyway, again, the feds still could. In 1988, Arizona Senator John McCain, some of you might have heard of him, drafted the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act, which allowed tribal gaming, but only in states where there were already legally allowed forms of gambling. So this includes things like the lottery, horse and dog racing, and then, of course, the casinos. This act also made a requirement for tribal nations to negotiate with their states on what would be allowed, and that was all well and good until the state refused to enter into said negotiations, as 3 governors in a row had done with the Yavapai Nation. If you're required to negotiate with the state and the state refuses to meet with you to negotiate, they have shut you down. So Patea had ultimately decided that as a sovereign nation, they had the right to proceed without state permission. So this is the president of the tribe. And he said, okay, well, we're sovereign, so we can do whatever the fuck we want. And so he went ahead with it. The original bingo hall had been opened in 1984 and was owned by non-tribal entities. A management firm had funded the opening and was running it. The tribe got 30% of the take at the time, and the management firm did everything for it. But in 1990, the Yavapai brought ownership of it so they could keep the money and continue learning the business. So now all of the money was theirs. In 1992, the tribe added slot machines and video poker. And the slot machines were basically, it was video bingo type things, and then the video poker. Previously, they'd been doing regular poker, like they could play in-person poker there, and that was legal. But the machines were not allowed in Arizona in general, and therefore weren't allowed on the Indian casino. The governor, Fife Symington, and the U.S. Attorney, Linda Akers, had beseeched the federal government to remove the machines from 5 area tribal casinos, and the feds had set this in motion, successfully raiding 4 others before the Yavapai refused to let them go quietly. And those others didn't see them coming, so all the money was still in those machines when they took them as well. Ooh. When the quiet resistance began that day, Governor Symington was called in to do something about the individuals blocking the FBI and movers in. He flew in via helicopter about 30 minutes after being notified and set up a quiet meeting with the tribal president, Clinton Patea, who had already mentioned, but not his full name. Patea and his people had fought the federal government when they'd planned to set up a dam that would flood a large portion of the tribe's 40 acres. They were just going to do that. This dam had been considered such a foregone conclusion that a luxury housing tract called Fountain Hills had been sold based on eventually being waterfront property. Instead, They got tribal front property. They had also fought for Native American voting rights and had arranged a water settlement where they leased a portion of that on their land and allowed them to sell water to the city and bring in some money that way. Basically, when they were put on reservations, there was no way to make money. They were forced to be completely dependent upon the government. And all these various tribes are trying to find ways to bring money in and get their people employed. Like, everybody loves to talk about an unemployed Indian, especially the people who live around a reservation. But who put them in that situation? Who forces that situation on them? And when you live in those neighboring cities, you discover that they won't hire them. So how far do they have to go to get a fucking job? So anyway, this is what we do, because the government doesn't want to have sovereign nations. They want to be able to run everything. They want to just be able to, this is ongoing. This is all constantly ongoing if you follow news at all. So I only see what comes through on the Cherokee news, but this is all the fucking time. Shit like this.
Tell me how you really feel, Shannon.
Ooh, you don't want to know. Pate and Symington spoke privately during the 5-hour standoff, coming to an agreement to put things on hold for 10 days, during which the machines would remain on the moving trucks, which would in turn remain on the casino grounds. The tractors were to leave so that only the trailers stayed on the premises, meaning no one could drive away with the 349 machines. Because this would leave employees without employment for the 10-day negotiation period, the state would pay out unemployment, which Symington would push through quickly. He actually agreed to send reps to all of those 5 areas where they had done this, right? And those other people, their machines were already gone because they didn't stop it. But he was going to send reps to get everybody signed up for unemployment. Again, making them dependent on the government. On the tribe side, the casino had brought in about $19 million just since October of the previous year. The New York Times stated 80% of that money had come from the machines. This money was being put to good use by the tribe and was vital to keeping people fed and taken care of. On Symington's side, this was $19 million that the state couldn't tax. Most people gambling at Indian casinos were not tribal citizens. Instead, non-tribal citizens came around and spent their money, which meant that money was leaving the state taxing pool and economy and filtering into the tribal economy instead. The machines were also impacting state profit gambling, like horse and dog racing. The state made money off of that, the lottery, and any other aspects of gambling that were considered legal in Arizona. Symington felt the casinos had a monopoly on machine gambling and he wanted it to stop. He said, quote, "It's a wealth transfer from our economy to theirs. So on one side of the ledger, we're going to ruin lives. On the other, we're helping Native Americans. Gambling is an unhealthy culture. I consider it to be a very cruel form of taxation," end quote. And given he didn't seem to have an issue with the state-run dog and horse racing or the lottery, those weren't cruel taxes, only the machines people like to plug some coins into. So it's only cruel when Indians are doing it, just so we're clear. And let me tell you, I read a bunch of interviews with this fucker, and he was very clearly racist. In later interviews, Symington would say he thought the federal government had actually intentionally chosen Mayflower moving trucks to rub the tribe's face in the irony. He would also be quoted in 1996 as saying, "They have 10 years to profit from that monopoly, then it comes to an end." This was right after he turned down negotiations with the Salt River Pima Maricopa tribe to get their own compact with the state and announced he wouldn't entertain any more requests from anyone. Patea himself was no slouch. He had a business degree and had worked in banking. So just to be clear, that a lot of these people were employed gainfully. They had to go to Phoenix to be employed gainfully. Some of these people had degrees. So we're not talking about savages here, as people so often seem to think. He had also been the executive secretary of the Arizona Commission of Indian Affairs for about half a decade, and he'd been on the tribal council starting in 1959 and had been around for the fight against the dam and their other battles they'd had. During the 10 days, the citizens held daily powwows. Tribal members from around the country showed up to offer their support and take part in the powwow. A group of Mohawks all the way from New York showed up on motorcycles. Members of 20 other tribes in Arizona showed up. There were people from Oregon, New Mexico, and elsewhere too. Even Canadians showed up to support them. The bingo hall was still open during this time, and people flocked inside to play bingo. Food and water were sent in from surrounding areas so that the people outside continuing their standoff were fed. While the protesters had been on with no weapons, there was fear that the FBI would try to come in mass earlier than the 10 days. So watches were set up along the routes they'd likely travel. And there was one guy in an interview said that some of the younger men he knew started preparing Molotov cocktails and putting together other things just in case something blew up. Now, why wouldn't they trust the FBI? Well, there's an entire history there, isn't there? So they were afraid of what was going to happen. Sure, there was this kind of, we'll call it a ceasefire, even though we're not talking about weapons, but there was this 10-day cooling off period, as Symington referred to it. And they didn't know if the government was intending to do something dirty during it. They did not. So just putting that out there.
Yeah, somebody can always surprise you.
Yeah. The Bureau of Indian Affairs made sure their officers were armed, called them all in, and prepared to set them on the protesters if necessary. And just so people know, many of the officers were tribal citizens. FBI agents left behind to guard the trucks played football with some of the protesters. I'll actually be posting a picture of that, enjoying drinks and food with them. While there were signs and protesters, no fights broke out. The media were called in, phone calls were made. The tribe did not just spend those 10 days waiting for the inevitable. And once the 10 days were over, they marched to the Capitol in protest and to bring attention to the issue with their supporters. Symington ultimately made a 10-year compact, like I've already referred to earlier, to allow machine gambling, but that didn't officially occur until Thanksgiving. So this starts in May. Also, Thanksgiving. Let's sit there for a moment. The machines that had been taken already were put in storage, moved around, and eventually destroyed. They did not get those machines back. The tribe was allowed to reopen the casino with 250 other machines that they had to buy. Symington's intention was to have them taken away again after the 10 years. Since there have been many other compacts with different tribes, but also some early unfairness in allowing a certain number of tribes to have the machines while denying other tribes from getting the same setup until they fought back through legal means. In 2021, sports betting became legal allowed via the casinos and non-native companies. So this became legal for Arizonans in general, and this included things like phone apps to do this. Blackjack was allowed, but not other things like craps and roulette. Blackjack then, so there were categories that I'll go into a little bit. And so craps and roulette were in this third category. In exchange for all this, the state was given regulatory power over tribal casinos. That was the deal that had to make. Now the state got to get their fingers in. The money from gambling income has helped Fort McDowell flourish. They've opened a gas station along the highway, golf courses, hotels, and resorts, and they even own a resort in Sedona. They were able to pay out stipends to tribal citizens, and by 1996, they were getting free medical and dental care along with their stipends, ensuring no tribal members had to depend upon welfare, unemployment, the government any longer. They were able to take over from the Bureau of Indian Affairs and Indian Health Services, rendering federal assistance unnecessary. And they built additional housing to rent out for low prices to tribal members. This is even with the required 30% set aside for future economic development as per that 1988 law. The tribe celebrates Sovereignty Day on May 12th every single year to commemorate this event. There were some complications with people accustomed to having no money suddenly having monthly payouts. At first, they weren't monthly. I think they were like quarterly, and then eventually they were flush enough they could give monthly payments to their employees or to the tribal citizens. The high school dropout rate increased for a time, and those who were unemployed and struggling already had issues figuring out a good ways to handle this sudden influx of money that they had never had. So that didn't go well. There ended up being a lot with drugs and alcohol and being able to purchase so much of that all of a sudden. So there were a lot of negative repercussions. But there had also been many who were employed off the reservation who were able to invest the money in college. And college became a far more realistic option for teen citizens. The tribe realized they had started the stipends without considering all the various issues that might come with them, as governments always do, and tribal governments are no different. And they put into place financial education and advisement programs for teens and many other solutions that helped even things out over the years. So there's kind of this crash there at the beginning where it was like half of the people were able to thrive with this. They still continued keeping their jobs, but they're going to be able to maybe retire at some point or something crazy like that. But then there were people who really struggled. Symington, for the record, would later be convicted of bank fraud and would resign in 1997 after re-election. Bill Clinton pardoned him in 2011 because fuck politicians anyway. But Teyer remained tribal president for 17 years more. He died in 2003 and was 81 years old at the time. Fort McDowell was small but mighty. Their actions against the federal and state governments in an attempt to protect their sovereignty helped legalize gambling machines for other tribes across the nation. Their fight inspired others, leading to decades of protections and improvements for different tribes. As of 2021, a new law was passed with support from Governor Douglas A. Ducey and the Arizona tribes, which allowed them to add Class 3 games, which are those like baccarat, roulette, craps, and others like that, which were previously not allowed. All 22 federally recognized tribes in Arizona now have gambling compacts with the state, giving tribes a means of income with varying amounts of independence from the U.S. government. While there are those who resent tribes having casinos, the majority of Arizonans supported the continuation of Indian gambling in a vote in 2002. There's a weird resistance in this country to Native American tribes having sovereignty and a means of financial support, and a lot of misunderstandings about how it all works. It's a shame people don't bother to educate themselves about all of it, instead relying on the talking heads to spread misinformation and bias. In the meantime, some reservations continue digging themselves out of poverty with casinos, resorts, and other businesses, but they are still fighting for those rights across the country. My sources: the New York Times, Fort McDowell Yavapai Nation website, Arizona Republic, Fountain Hills Times Independent, High Country News, Fountain Hills Historians Facebook page, and the Arizona Department of Gaming. So I've had a lot of people say nasty things to me about casinos and all of that stuff. And they seem to think that the government just gives a casino to them. Mm-hmm. They don't. This is completely, they have to get it approved, which they shouldn't have to because they're sovereign. But they have to find funders or come up with that funding themselves. They have to build it, do the plans, bring in the experts to teach them how to do this. They have to do all the work. There is nothing given to them at all. So it's ridiculous how pissed off people have been talking to me about Native American casinos. And if you give them nothing else they can do to bring income in and expect them to be dependent upon the federal government for everything they have, like, what do you think is going to happen? So it is a topic that I've had to discuss too many times with people, and they still don't come away understanding jack shit about it. So
it's one of those things that's, we have a lot of opinions ingrained into our society that we can't seem to get rid of. And telling people to think about it and use your own brain is kind of like just throwing gas on the fire. It has the opposite effect. They refuse to consider anything because you told them to consider it.
Right. It's just a block. So like the Cherokee even have a toll road, the Cherokee Nation in Oklahoma, to be specific. But because there are multiple, but they have a toll road, they have the casinos, they have all this stuff, but they actually flourish so much that they've been able to set up a hospital that serves surrounding areas, which is not just tribal citizens. There's such poverty around them, including the white community, that the Cherokee are able to actually help outward now and not just not be dependent upon the federal government.
Nice.
So, but it varies, you think about Pine Ridge Reservation, they have none of that. They still don't have plumbing and electrical on a lot of that reservation. They don't have cars to get them anywhere. So in terms of being employed off the reservation, how does that happen? It doesn't. Right. So there's just a lot that it would take way too much to inform people of. But there's, just as with everybody else, things vary greatly between tribes. But I'm really impressed with the Yavapai Nation and how hard they've fought in their history to make sure that they didn't get screwed over, because the lot end up just rolling over because they're a really tiny little speck against a very large government with a lot of power. So. All right. That's it. That was my soapbox.
That's it. It's a great soapbox. So I brought in a bunch of little things to talk about to the show, and you guys always come up with like these huge things. But I think the point is for anybody out there who's listening, who's like a writer or who has like the inclination to be a writer, there's so many ideas in every single one of these for stories, and so many ways to approach it. Like the human interest story of like one person looking at this or being in the middle of it, or the fascinating, weird coincidences that happen, and it just. To me, that's kind of like where I came up with the idea, to talk about like the Whiskey River, right? It's like, yeah, it's weird that 13 people died drinking the whiskey and nobody died in the fire. But I mean, just like picking one of those person to write a story about would be interesting, and that's, anyway, I'm just kind of babbling now. I'm doing the writer thing and babbling.
Yeah, we never babble.
Never. And we've done topics where it's like a bunch of little things in the past too, because sometimes those are fun, like a loose theme or whatever.
Oh, like the I did one on Waffle House. That was one of my favorites. But I've done Christmas crimes and Easter crimes, and have I done Thanksgiving crimes? I feel I must have.
I don't know.
I'll have to look. But yeah,
that would all be over family dinner. That would be the Thanksgiving crimes that we have. Family dinner.
Yes.
Hell, I think that we had a local case that some just ended up in like murder or something at a dinner table not that many years ago. Not shocking.
No.
But yeah, there's an endless bounty of things to cover on a true crime podcast. But
mayhem is my favorite.
Yes. That's, of course, loosely defined anyway. That's why.
But that's the kind of stuff, because if you put it in a story, people are like, oh, no, that would never happen. You're like, actually, that's,
That's exactly what happened.
I had a story called The Buffalo Hunters. It starts out with the train coming out of Kansas with everybody shooting at the herds of buffalo, just shooting as fast as they can, as many bullets as they can as they go by. And it was advertised that way. They advertised the train of take the train, shoot the buffalo. It was advertisements. And people they didn't mind that there was somebody who was like a shape-shifting bear in the story. But they were like, that part where they're shooting the buffaloes, that's so unrealistic. I'm like, that's the only part of the story that's true.
Right. And they would just leave those carcasses to rot.
Yeah.
And they weren't getting eaten, and they weren't, but it was, oh, hey, let's do some trophy shooting without keeping trophies because they weren't stopping the train. Right.
Yeah.
And people don't know that that's the thing that happened. Because it's absurd when we look at it now. But how many things do we have like that now? Let's go on a safari to trophy hunt. Look at these majestic animals. Here they are dead now. Here is my leopard.
At least there's been a little bit of movement toward photo safaris.
Yes.
Well, hello again, kitty.
My freaking 20-pound cat has decided she wants to join the party.
It was a photo safari. She was starting it.
That's right.
Yes. I don't think she's ever gotten on my lap.
She has never done this. No.
She's looking for more liver juice, which was something we talked about before the recording started.
And we're just going to leave that with no explanation.
Right. Let's not
liver
explain it. She's bad because my husband's up at our cabin right now doing it snowed up there last night.
Wow.
So he had to go up and start getting things
ready, winterized.
Yes. And then we're going up in a week to kind of go leaf peeping and do all of that good stuff. And then it seems like we're going to have to close up early. The snow took longer to melt this year, so we didn't get up until late. And then now we're going to have to shut it down a few weeks early, I think. So I'm like, are we going to get one of those big snowstorms this year that we haven't had since 98?
That's what I was thinking. I said something about that in the car last night, and my wife was just like, shut your mouth. No.
I know, right? I'm like, as long as we don't have to be anywhere, let's have it happen. It was kind of fun, except I had to work. My boss lived in Woodland Park, and he said, hey, we need to open the movie theater because heaven forbid this movie theater ever be closed for a day. And I said, sure, but my little convertible is buried literally under the snow right now. So if you want me to work, you have to drive down from Woodland Park and take me. And that bastard did. And then he went back.
That's insane.
It is insane. And he had to help Jeff dig out my car too. That was part of the
But if you wrote that into a story, people would go, that's not believable.
If I wrote any of the shit this man did into a story, they wouldn't believe it. He'd be the best villain because he was a villain in real life. But but yeah, I was like, he's not going to come down for Woodland Park. And he's like, I'll be down. Damn it. I don't want to go to work because I was the manager. So I had
those are the worst characters to write because you can't convincingly write their motivations for other people to agree and understand and go along with.
No, I still can't. I still couldn't tell you what this dude was even thinking with any of the stuff he did. He was just an awful human being. But and basically that job drew awful human beings as managers. And then I was manager, so I don't know what that means. But anyway, I did not treat my employees. She'll do it. She'll do the biscuits with those
The cat
claws.
is making biscuits on my legs.
Yay.
I have a sweatshirt on, so it's a thick sweatshirt. But every once in a while, it claw goes through, and I'm like, whoo.
No, my husband showed me his stomach yesterday because he's her person, and she has to do the biscuits on him every day, and it is speckled from her claws going into it. And I was like, this is why I don't let her do it when she's on me. I'm sorry it makes you sad that you can't do biscuit making, but
That's funny.
It hurts.
Well, can I pitch something before we wrap it up?
Yeah.
Certainly.
I'm going to give MB and Shannon a couple links. If you're a writer or you think you have writer tendencies or anything like that, I'm going to give them a link to Smashwords along with a coupon to get a free copy of my ebook, Blood from Your Own Pen, which is about writing and editing and self-publishing. That code should be good until December 1st. I also am going to give them a link to my personal Dropbox that I'm hoping they will test and make sure it works first. That will give you an ability to download an audio story called Blue is the New Gold. It's an excerpt from the audiobook anthology versions of Murder Bugs. So it's one of a bunch of stories in there. It's just my story. It's the whole story. So it's not just a little teaser. It's the whole story. If you download it and enjoy it, please consider buying the anthology and supporting the people that made it possible. And then, earlier you were like, hey, tell everybody what you're doing. I didn't, of course. My publishing company, and shout out to Lou Berger for mentioning me when he was on last time. Thanks, Lou. I appreciated it. My publishing company is currently working on an anthology called Mermaidens 2, Darker Waters. That should be out somewhere around the end of this year, I believe. And as we move into like the Christmas season, I want to pitch the novel that I want you to buy of mine and love it and enjoy it forever. It's called Lost Angel, a midlife crisis thriller. The publisher approached me and asked me to write this. It says it's Midlife Crisis Thrillers Book 2. Don't let that throw you. It's a completely standalone book. I love the whole idea of the midlife crisis thriller. They wanted a story. If they pitched it as Die Hard with a dad bod.
I like that.
They want like the middle-aged fat dude with family, kids, whatever, that like when the stuff goes bad, you don't find out that he was secretly a Navy SEAL and he will find you. And just a normal dude dealing with extraordinary problems. So
in the minivan.
Yeah. In the minivan. So mine is it's like a cozy thriller, which the best thing I can compare it to is imagine you're watching like a Hallmark Christmas holiday and then things go bad. Because that's what my story is. And you'll love it, I promise.
Yeah, because it starts out with not a pageant. What's it called? With the
parade. Yes.
The parade.
Yeah, the publisher.
I have read it. It is good. You'll enjoy it.
Oh, thank you. I forgot that you'd read it.
Uh-huh.
Yay.
So, I haven't read it yet.
And so for the links that we've been given, just so people know, you can find those on the Facebook page. You can find it on Instagram, where of course you have to copy paste because you can't click on a link on Instagram. I wish they'd update that, but maybe I don't. I don't know. I don't know what the repercussions would be of it or why they don't have clickable links on there. But yeah, so those will be available there and you'll be able to find that. And then what is your website?
My personal website is samknight.com. The publishing website is knightwritingpress.com.
Perfect. And that's night, as in, white knight, K-N-I.
With a K. Night with a silent K. It's Knight.
Knight. All right. Well, thank you for coming on, and thank you to folks for listening.
Thank you so much for having me, you guys. And I was totally serious. When you guys were talking earlier, I just like went right into the podcast, and then you were both looking at me. I'm like, oh yeah, I have to talk now too.
Wait, I'm part of this right now. I love that. And peace.
Goodbye.
We will talk to you all next month.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
Find us on Facebook and Instagram or at our website, mysteriesmonstersmayhem.com.
Please like, rate, and review, follow, and share wherever your favorite podcasts are downloaded.
Thank you for listening and supporting our podcast. We'll be back with more shenanigans.